Vice Mayor Sebring,
Present.
Mayor Clarno.
Here. All right, we do not have any special presentations and announcements today, so we'll go straight into public comment. This is a time for members of the public to address the city council on matters of city business. Everyone will have 3 minutes to speak. I will give a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. We'll do individuals in the room first, followed by those on Zoom. If you would like to make a comment on Zoom, please go to the React tab and raise your hand. If you wish, please state your name and address for the record at the beginning. And with that, we will open to public comment. Oh, and if your comment addresses anything on old business or new business, I do ask that you hold your comment till that time, as there will be dedicated public comment for those items. And with that, I'll open it to public comment.
I'll go. One. Hi, mine. Did I push the right?
It's on.
Oh, it was.
Turn it off.
Now, yep.
Control Alt
And if you do
Delete.
choose to state your name and address for the record, I will start your time. If it's at your first sentence, I'll start your time after you do the name and address.
My name's Leslie Wild and I live here in Dunsmuir. I wanted to thank the council for creating and adopting the formal protocols. When I was on the city council, there were no protocols. It was a little wild westy. And a lot of times I would be told, you can't do that. And because there's a rule, and I'd say, well, can you show me that rule? Because I'm kind of legal oriented and there weren't any rules to show. So I went and I talked to some other council members. One of them was Tim Stearns. I don't like him either, but he was the person that said, ask, where's your protocols? You need to develop protocols. And it took me a couple tries and it was never fully adopted, but I really want to thank this council for creating protocols. I know you've spent a lot of time on them. And what I want to say is I want to thank the council for creating and adopting protocols. They protect the process, they ensure transparency, and they keep the power balanced. So every member operates on equal footing, but they only work if they're consistently followed. And if your peers don't step in when somebody doesn't, and the rules are ignored and they stop being safeguards and they start becoming suggestions. So I urge you to keep enforcing them among yourselves, because that's how you can maintain the public's trust. And I have one other thing. I'm leaving at 7 because my team is playing at 7 and I'm not going to miss that. Right? Even in Wisconsin, we even watch preseason games. So my last thing is last week or last time we were all here together, I think it was July 17th, there was an agenda item. It was tabled. But there was, it was something about stipends for council members and what it meant, not council members, for staff members. And there was an operative word that was missing. And the stipends were because the, I think they called it the administrative assistant was on administrative leave and they forgot to use the word paid administrative leave. So I just want to make sure that that part is included in the record. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dwight Bailey, 5906 Castle Avenue. This is on the same subject. In the staff report presented to this body at the last meeting about the stipend, it does say that it is a budgetary item. It also states here that the funding that the money would come out of for that would be the water fund and the sewer fund. And as you know, we just had a lot of discussion with our sewer coming back, a lot of issues on that. And I wouldn't want to be a party of taking the money out of that fund for a stipend.
All right, thank you.
Kate's just coming back from vacation, but I wanted to take a moment to fill in for her and say thank you to Matthew and Kate and the gang, the Rotary, and everybody putting Brewfest on. I thought it was fantastic. Michael, we missed you. It was a pleasure working with you. Story time, 9:30 at night. I'm out in the dark picking some things up, and one of the vendors came to me. He goes, "You guys have amazing volunteers here tonight, and I just want to let you know that you guys must get something for this. What do they give you? A dinner? Do they give you an award? What do you get for doing this volunteerism?" And my answer was, "I get a community I'm excited to live in." And so I just want to share that with you. So much of Dunsmuir runs on volunteers. And so thank you guys. It was a party worth having. This lady taught me how to pour beer. Good job, Leslie.
Just really quick, Stephen, if you could just make sure that everybody is muted online. I believe there's a telephone that's unmuted right now. And so I don't want to pick up any background feedback. Thank you.
Is there any further public comment from anyone in the room? Seeing none, we'll move on to Zoom. I do see that we have someone on Zoom who would like to make a public comment. Would you mind unmuting them? All right. Allison, you should be good to talk. And once
Okay.
you start going, I'll do the 3 minutes.
All right, can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Excellent, good to see everybody. I want to just make sure that City Council is continuously meeting with city management on the agenda. I believe you guys had a calendar that you had made to go in for, I don't know, weekly or bi-weekly meetings to set the agenda. I trust that that is continuing to happen. I believe it was on some sort of rotation. Second area of concern would be the downtown revitalization. I came before you guys about 5 months ago with deep concerns about the amount of money spent on Cosmont. And Cosmont was also concerned because we're like a horse that's been led to water with a $200,000 report directly in front of us as to what we need to do next for downtown revitalization. And nothing has been done. The agenda doesn't reflect any follow-up, and that was supposed to happen in April. So I remain concerned about that as well. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, is there any further public comment this evening? Seeing none, I will close public comment. All right, and with that, we'll move on to council and staff comments, starting with the sheriff's department. If you have anything to report this evening. Nothing to report at this time. Thank you. City Manager Reef.
Mayor and council, so over the last couple of weeks, we've been focusing on working on the budget, which is here on this agenda. As you can see, it's a pretty heavy agenda. So most everything administrative wise has been focused on that. We did have an airport inspection yesterday from the state, which is our annual inspection. So once we have that report, we can bring that back to the council. And been fixing water leaks and various other things and prepping for some fall work coming up here soon. So other than that, most of it was focused on committees and finance.
All right. Mr. Decatur.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to let everyone know we will be having a wildfire workshop Friday at 5:30 in the community center. Sorry, not this Friday, next Friday, 5:30 in the community center. I believe that's the 15th. This workshop will be to get people signed up for the 2 wildfire mitigation projects happening in town. One's going to be starting in September on the east side of the river here. It'll be River Avenue, Butterfly, South First Street, those areas. We'll have a schedule soon for that, a rough schedule. And we'll be bringing that to the next council meeting also to talk about. The other project is for anywhere in town. People can sign up for a free home assessment, and then they'll determine whether or not they can provide some mitigation work for you after that home assessment. They've already done 30 home assessments in town, and they're going to be working on 20 properties so far. That work probably won't begin for a couple more months, but you should go ahead and sign up for that now because they will have a limited number of spots.
And what time did you say the workshop was?
5:30 next Friday.
Thank you.
And I have one more thing. As everybody's probably aware, if you've driven to downtown, the sewer project has now moved towards the downtown area and will keep migrating towards the south over the next about 30 to 45 days. So just and north, going both directions. And so please just be patient and be cautious. I almost saw a FedEx driver get hit by a truck because he stopped in the construction zone. So and got out. So just please be careful. it is still construction and we're just trying to make our community better.
Well, all right, we'll move into council comments then, starting with Councilmember Bryan.
Mr. Mayor, first, I would like to thank Chief Padilla and all of my members of our local Dunsmuir Fire District for getting the fire being first on the scene. We had the Soda Creek fire last week, and their prompt action, that's state health tech, made it no longer a threat. It was pretty scary the first time in a few years to see a fire so closely connected to Dunsmuir. But thank you. I don't think it appeared that please give them your support.
We also had the Eleanor fire, same day.
Yeah, it was more of a term city fire, but we did have the lightning strike fire.
Yep.
So I want to thank them. I had the opportunity to help with Brewfest. Thank the Chamber, Kate, Rotary, and City Arts Museum for their support of that event happening. It was a great success this year. If you missed it, please come next year. We do need more volunteers. Wonderful volunteer group was. It'd be a lot easier to run events like that if we could get more and not have enough burn. So we have a need for as many as 20 more volunteers next year. We don't have to do the full time, just a little shift here or there. So as it comes around next year, it's always the first Saturday in August. In July, we were able to hold a summit with the Union Pacific. They brought in the real estate department head for this region, as well as the public projects department head, and went out to Falls for the first time. Our client was there as well, and we had productive conversations about how to reach a real estate agreement on the trail for a lot discussed, and it's as close as we've ever gotten to a trail up to this point. There's ample opportunity to build momentum from here to actually get the trail going. So it's really positive feedback. Next steps should be a written agreement from the Pacific to us allowing us to build the trail. So we're all working towards that, and they seem to be eager to help mitigate their safety problem. It's life and death every day out there on the rails. We're trying to help them build the trail that mitigates that risk. So they have recognized that in our internal conversations, and we're looking forward to their continued support. Lastly, I'd like to thank Stephen for helping us cross the finish line with some of these fuel reduction projects. You go back not too long ago, 6-7 years ago, there was more of a pipe dream to get meaningful fuel reduction in Dunsmuir finish the fire. So please participate. There's people here willing to volunteer, helping the property ready for wildfires will come. So I encourage everyone to come next Friday. And thank you, Stephen, for organizing. That's all.
Councilmember Hubbard.
No comments.
Councilmember Lucchese.
No comment.
Councilmember Vice Mayor Sebring.
No comment.
All right, and I'd just like to also thank everyone who helped and attended the Brewfest this year. I've been on the organizing committee for that event for 7 to 10 years now. I don't even remember how long it's been. And this is the first one I have not been able to attend in that whole time. And I just want to thank everyone who helped to make that event a success. I know I was worrying about it. I've been worrying about it for months, as I always do. And it was so good to get through at the end of the night and make phone calls during the night and through the night and at the end of the night, and know that it had been a success. So thanks to everyone for that. And with that, we'll move on to committee reports. I know Finance Committee met, but I assume we're not going to do a long thing on Finance Committee, since that's what we discussed are our 2 agenda items tonight. Anything you want to say for Finance Committee other than that?
No, other than to say we're honored by both the presence of our citizen member, Alan Clother, and our elected treasurer, Hannah Smith. I would like them to have the opportunity to interact with council when it comes to the finance report on the budget. It being one of the central tasks given to us.
And I know we had talked about that in the Finance Committee, and I know we're planning on giving them the opportunity to be part of the discussion when we got to the budget. With that, were there any other committees that met? Nope. Okay. So with that, we'll move on to item number 8, approval of the minutes. And we have the minutes from July 26th and the minutes from July 17th.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I would move we approve these minutes, but I'd like to note that they're some of the finest minutes I've ever read. So, thank you.
Second.
No, it actually captures what it's like to be at a meeting, which is what minutes ought to do.
Thank you.
Good work. All right. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes approved. And we'll move on to the consent agenda, which today consists of one item, the check register for 7/12 through 8/1.
Motion to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
All right, it has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda approved. All right, we have no public hearing tonight, so we'll move on to our business items. I would like to move item 11A after 12B, just so that way I feel that the context. I feel if we do them in the other order and move old business after new business, most of the questions that will come up during item number 11 will then get answered during the discussion on the budget. So unless anyone is opposed to it, I want to move those 2 items. All right. We'll move on to, since it'll be a quick one, we'll move on to item number 12, A, which is the personnel policy.
All right, Mayor and Council, so I'm going to introduce Aggie here, but so I believe it was back in January-ish, we started compiling the handbook, and Aggie has kind of taken on this animal, and we wanted to provide it to you in small bites. And so we're just going to present it as informational tonight and then bring it back for comments from the council, because it is a lot, and we did bring it on the same night as the budget. And so we didn't want to overwhelm you. So with that, I'll let Aggie take on the rest of the comments.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, council. First draft, we went ahead and pulled different policies that we felt were important to include, and we sought legal counsel to make sure that we also had other, items that we didn't omit anything. However, we do realize that there's going to be edits and some feedback. So like Dustin had said, we wanted to make sure that we allow ample time for the council members and the members of the community to review it and give us feedback.
Thank you. Does anyone have any feedback this evening? I do have a couple items, but I was just going to let everyone give some feedback, then we'll go to public comment. And then do be aware, this is information only tonight, and this will be coming back around in front of council. So if you would like to make a public comment on this tonight, when the time comes up, you're more than welcome to, but the item will be coming back around. Right, I'll go first unless anyone else wants to. Overall, I really liked it. I did just find 1 or 2 things. The main one is there's a couple places in here where I think it was just placeholder titles or language snuck into the draft. One I noticed was bookkeeper was referenced a few times, and I'm not sure if that's supposed to, in the context, I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be referring to the treasurer or the auditor.
We caught that also, so
okay.
It's on
Yeah.
our list.
Cool. Then on page 99, and that's page 9, or 1 second, let me check and see if that's, yeah, I think it's on page 99. Of course, I left the note where I made all these. The under other leaves, the executive leave, is that part of the current policy?
Yeah, I think we currently call it admin leave.
Admin leave, okay, so that's just the admin leave policy. that already exists and it's just, okay. I wanted to make sure on that one. I had one other on my notes, but fortunately, we're going to be reviewing this item again, so I can bring it up at that time, or I can send you over an email. Anything else from anybody? All right, with that, I'm going to open up this item to public comment. Please limit all public or all comment to this particular item. You'll have 3 minutes, 30-second warning when your time is almost up. All right, and with that, I will open it up to public comment. And if you would like to make a public comment on this on Zoom, please go to the React tab and raise your hand. All right, and seeing none, I will close public. Oh, no, never mind.
Hello, it's me again. Can you hear me?
We can go ahead and start. Yeah.
Okay, Allison, 5334 River Avenue. I have always, as you guys know, had deep concerns about the contract with Accessible Human Resources. Yes, Mr. Reef, it was since December, $480. February, $4,184. March, $4,184. March again, $5,465. April, $5,474. May, $3,379. June, $7,007. July, $6,658. That's $36,833.64 spent so far on this HR firm. The job description of city management directly overlays the contract with this HR company. Also, union contracts are legally binding agreements between the employer and represented workers. Union contracts are the result of formal negotiations under labor law. Personnel policy is an internal document. It's created and modified by the employer. It's not negotiated with the union, and it doesn't carry any legal authority. In a unionized workplace, the employer must bargain with the union over terms and conditions of employment. It seems, given the circumstances, is being used as a weaponized tool. I demand that we stop paying an HR company in Texas to do the job of what a city manager should be doing. Workplace culture and climate is not the responsibility of a person in Texas. With less responsibilities on the city manager, approximately $40,000 less since January, a cost of wage increase for non-union employees should not be considered.
All right, we are back. Sorry for that disruption. Allison, we're going to give you, you're just at about a minute left of your time. I'm going to give you 2 minutes since I know when this gets uploaded to Siskiyou Media Council, they're going to probably have to splice a little bit of what you said out in the first time. So I just want to make sure you have 2 minutes or enough time to just make sure you get the full 3 minutes. So with that, Stephen, if you want to unmute Allison. All right, you are unmuted. And as soon as I hear you start going, I will start your time.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Clarno, and thank you, everybody in the room who sent me a text. I appreciate you guys solving that problem. I'm just going to start again for the sake of documentation. Each month, and I went over each month, you know, between $4,000 and $7,000 a month has been spent since January on this HR firm. That's like hiring an entirely new employee. Not to mention, every time they find an employee, the city of Dunsmuir has to pay them 10% as a finder's fee. I think that's absolutely outrageous. It's very concerning as somebody who's a lifelong union member and whose City of Dunsmuir staff is mostly union members, that a personnel policy is even introduced in the absence of meetings with union representatives. It's the union contracts that are legally binding agreements between employers and represented workers. It's the union contracts that are a result of formal negotiations under labor law. Personnel policy is an internal document. It's created and modified by the employer. There is no other input that has gone into it. And community input, by the way, does not go into personnel policy. It's not negotiated with the union. It doesn't carry any legal authority. And in a unionized workplace, the employer must bargain with the union over the terms and the conditions of employment. It seems, given the circumstances, this is being used as a weaponized tool. I demand that the city of Dunsmuir stop paying a more than full-time salary to an HR company in Texas to do the job of what city management should be doing.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Workplace culture and climate is not the responsibility of a person in Texas. We really need to reconsider this contract. We need to take a close look at it, how much money we've spent, $40,000 so far this year. That could be over $80,000 in money for one fiscal year. That's absolutely outrageous for a staff this small. Thank you.
Time's up. Thank you. All right, is there any other further comment? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment on this item for this evening. Is there any more discussion before we move on to the next item, since this is information only? And I did just want to touch that this entire document is being run by the union, correct?
Yes, the entire document has been reviewed by the union on multiple occasions, and we were given the blessing of, I think it was the 31st. And so we brought it forward at this meeting after the union has taken a look at it and reviewed it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Unless there's anything else, we'll move on to the next item. All right. We will move on to the new item, or the next item, which is 12B, the budget for 2025 through 2027. Just FYI, Finance Committee did meet on Monday and had discussion, considerable discussion around the budget, and there was several recommendations that went out from Finance Committee that did not make it into the agenda. Is there a copy of this for the public up there?
The supplemental did get posted on the next day after the meetings, or Wednesday. It got posted Wednesday right after I sent it to the council.
Okay, so this did get.
It has been posted online, and there is, if somebody does want to see it, I think there's a copy setting up there.
Okay, and if there's not, we can, since I was privy to all of the Finance Committee stuff, my copy could go up front.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Finance Committee didn't just meet this Monday.
Yes.
Finance Committee, by my calculations, met over a dozen times since the budget process began in late January, early February, including every Monday in May and the last 3 Mondays. So
yes, my comment was only referring to that. Sorry, I did not make that clear, that the supplemental is only for this Monday's meeting of the Finance Committee, not any of the other meetings. So all of those are representative in what was sent out in the regular agenda. And with that, City Manager Reef.
All right, Mayor and Council. So this is probably one of the more challenging budgets I've ever had to put together. I addressed some of the comments associated in the supplemental budget staff report, and I'll kind of review that for the public's knowledge. So staff and Finance Committee have met numerous times over the past 4 months to develop the 25-27 through 27 budget. There's a lot of things going on in the economy that are inflating operational costs with inflation and tariffs, as well as the expiration of the city's transaction and use tax in this fiscal budget. Due to these factors, the budget presented operational deficits across multiple funds, including general fund, sewer, water, and solid waste. While there is a deficit, the general fund and water will still meet the reserve requirements through the near term, with long-term projections to be impacted in the third fiscal year if revenue sources are not increased across all funds. So I addressed in the staff report, I addressed 4 of the recommendations, and then I can kind of go into the budget and give a high-level overview of each section and by department. of any, if there's any major shifts from what we've seen in the previous year. So one of the discussions we had was indirect cost allocations. There, we kind of went back and forth on how to handle this because we have seen a substantial increase in cost, but we also have a deficit in sewer, water, and solid waste and gas tax and solid waste accounts. So that number normally is budgeted at 225,000. And staff has recommended for an increase to 255,000. This is calculated off of 15% of general fund services that could reasonably impact, the utilities such as police services, planning, and finance, those type of services that are not that they could see a general benefit from. And but that Finance Committee has made the recommendation of 225,000, which was what it was for the previous 2 years. And I just wanted to, staff is making the recommendation of 255. So there is a difference in what those recommendations look like.
If I may,
Sure, go
'cause
ahead.
this doesn't capture the full recommendation. It was to keep it at that in this budget, but independently study the reality of our indirect cost allocations, what they are, what they fairly ought to be, without the context of the budget. So it wasn't to permanently keep it this way, but keep it this way in the budget in fairness to the rate structure now, and then look into a further study of what it really ought to be.
And also, not just a further study, but I think, and once we get to the Finance Committee portion, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe also part of the consensus of the Finance Committee was to try to come up with a more set policy on indirect cost allocation versus the kind of looser way it's assigned now.
Yeah.
That we can use moving forward. And then that would be one of the next couple tasks that the Finance Committee was given by, or tackled to bring forward said policy to council to use in the future. We felt it was important to do this relatively soon, just because several of our rate studies are expiring, and several of the funds do need to go through the 218 process. Well, technically, almost all of them do, with varying amounts of effects. So,
Sorry, the main point was Finance Committee did not recommend keeping it that, but passing that in this budget.
Correct.
And then independently coming up with a correct justification with everything involved. There's a lot that goes into indirect cost allocation. And through a meeting I had prior to Finance Committee, our auditor recommended having that process be as independent and justified as possible, as much as possible by the data of the allocations, not how it looks in the budget. So to avoid that, that's where Finance Committee built a consensus. Both options are very reasonable, though, I would assess.
All right, and then item number 2, one of the recommendations from the in year 2 of our budget, which we'll go through here in a minute, Public Works building. So we've been in the ongoing process of building and constructing the Public Works building. Year 1 reflects $150,000 expenditure. Year 2, $1,200,000 expenditure with a planned proposed borrow of $1,200,000. Finance Committee made the recommendation to borrow only $1,050,000 with $150,000 being spent out of reserve. With that consideration, staff also will accept that recommendation of the Finance Committee. And then it highlights the actual line item where that will change and adjust when the budget's published. Item number 3, there was a corrected personnel budget. It came out in the staff report. There was a comment to the city attorney as of this morning. And so I do have actually a full version unredacted. And so because of the nature of public salaries and that kind of, the city attorney recommended that we should not redact that section. And so I now will have an unredacted version requested for the council to place as a part of the budget. And item number 4, Finance Committee recommendation for a quarterly budget review due to all of the challenges we've had with this budget, and I also agree with that. And so I'd like to kind of dive into.
Jump in there for just
Sure,
1
go
second
ahead.
to just expand on the finance committee's reasoning behind that last point. As we start going through the numbers here, you will see that most of the funds do have some significant deficits. However, throughout the last couple budgets, the budget is an ever living document and an ever living document that changes all the time with council action or savings that staff is able to do. For instance, the last budget we've come in under budget due to hard work keeping it that way. So really part of this quarterly review is we want to make sure as we're moving forward that we are at least staying on track towards improving where we are from here, and that funds, that we don't get into a problem with cash flow because we weren't paying attention. So we really want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on this moving forward to ensure that if the situation isn't as grim or if certain things do occur, we know it as quickly as possible, and as a city can react proactively instead of like several other cities in the region have, waiting until it's far too late to do anything about it. So, all right, with that, I'll put it off.
Thank you. So diving into the budget, there has not been any changes to the organizational chart since the last round. The vision statement is the same, which is on page 113 of the packet. On the next page is the goals, fiscal year 2025 through 2027, and kind of some of the areas. I have 8 items on here, which include the public works building construction as number 1, improve financial stability as number 2, downtown revitalization number 3, tourism infrastructure development number 4, address city equipment needs number 5, facility improvements number 6, long-term infrastructure improvements, wastewater treatment, sewer, water, roads as number 7, and ongoing code enforcement with legal support. And each of those I worked the best I could to try and address those, and then also highlight those in the city manager's letter. And so the important part, we kind of discussed public works building with the 1.5 or 150,000 allocation this year, and then 1.2 million the following year. And addressing visual aesthetics of the ballpark area, adding parking and a fresh updated look to the area. Ultimately, we want to make sure that if we're going to put a facility there, that we want to positively impact that neighborhood in a way that is good for the long run. Improved financial stability is a big, strong focus in this budget. As we get into the numbers, we'll have a deficit budget. The current budget shows deficit across the 4 major funds. 43% of this is associated with capital expenditures, though. You'll notice that there's kind of reduced labor costs. This was kind of a planned thing. If you remember, in the last 2-year budget cycle, I requested that we kind of do an overhire for employees, and to kind of, as some were getting ready to retire, that we would be able to onboard some before that happened. And so then over the last year, they have retired, and then we also had a resignation, and we have a vacant position. So you'll see a reduction in what those costs are over most of the salaries, especially through the public works related areas. And then the next area is transaction and use tax, which we also have on this meeting. This tax is 0.5% is set to expire in March of 26. The budget reflects that for both years 2025, 26 and 26, 27. And we, as a Finance Committee and as staff, we're recommending a 1%. Most of these funds, transaction use does include like Amazon related transactions. And you know, it's people who are coming here to eat at our restaurants. And so it's not necessarily just, you know, groceries aren't impacted, right? So if you're having to go to a Dollar General or and get some groceries, you're not going to be taxed on those items. And so it's important to address. But as you can see, a 1%, which we'll discuss here in our next item after the budget, is approximately 270,000 in revenue. And if the measure fails, the city would lose 135,000 in revenue. And so we have reflected the worst case scenario in this budget. And so that reflects also in our deficit budget in the second year. Updated fee structure is a goal that we need to look at internally. There's a number of fees that we haven't addressed in quite a long period. I know we're at the end of our cycle for the airport. We're at the end of our cycle for water and sewer and also solid waste. And so, you know, that'll include 218 processes and those kind of things. And so all of those things are important for us to, you know, ensure we're able to maintain our services. Focus on downtown revitalization. We recently completed the plan a year ago with some 5 core strategies. And then we've been working on code enforcement of non-productive buildings and ongoing funding for that as well. And then additionally, focusing on tourism infrastructure, efforts to complete the trail to Mossbury Falls and improving safety for visitors. Hedge Creek Falls area has been an uptick in tourism, and it's increased our maintenance related cost. I know we've addressed some of that with bringing forward the parking stuff, and that'll start coming forward after here in the next few months on what that looks like for a fee standpoint. And then, you know, additionally, we've also adopted the California City of Waterfalls proclamation, and we hope to capitalize on that as well, and work to, you know, improve on our TOT revenues by getting people to stay here longer. Addressing equipment needs. So we've worked really diligently in the last 2-year budget, and we've been able to update a number of our trucks, but we have not addressed many of our large equipment needs, and some of those are, you know, well over 20 years old. And so now we're starting to have to focus on some of that. And there's not a big focus on it because those are really expensive items. So we'll probably look at some alternative methods as, you know, to maybe reduce even what is budgeted for maybe lease items or something like that, and with a longer term purchase process. And then addressing facilities. As you know, we have numerous buildings that are over 80 years old, some over 100 years old. And I think this building here that we sit in will be 100 years next year. And so the ongoing maintenance and stuff like that, we have a number of roofs that need repair and those kind of things. And we're not able, because of the deficit budget, we were not able to fully address a lot of those needs. But they're still there. Long-term infrastructure improvements. So as I mentioned earlier in the council meeting tonight, I'll kind of start from my bottom of my list and work up, because that's where we're at today. Sewer collection project that's going on right now. Airport taxiway reconstruction. That is currently, the bid is in process of being approved by FAA. That hopefully will start here within another couple of weeks. UV disinfection system, that one is supposed to go out for bid this fall. Mossbury Springs improvement, that would be construction next spring. And then Butterfly Bridge replacement. And everything there, the one amazing part about it is, out of all of that, we don't have a lot of money out of pocket. Those are all big capital spends, but they're all grant funded. And so I like focusing on those because that's a big win for the community. And then ongoing focus on code enforcement and legal support. And so that kind of ties into the city manager's letter. And so, you know, I'd be open to any comments on that. I work diligently to kind of tie it into the goals, and also looking towards the future and what that looks like. All right. So getting into the numbers, so the general fund, page 120 of the packet. So the first, that page is the revenues, and then we'll see expenditures, the top version of expenditures. So we're looking at the second to last column and the last column for this budget. And so if you look on page 121, basically the bottom line is we're in a deficit of $230,780. As noted in my memo, that is a supplementary memo after the finance committee, there will be an additional $150,000 deficit associated with the public works building that will be added to the $132,000 deficit in year 2. But in the bottom, the important part is that, you know, even with spend down and no revenue in our transaction and use tax in 26, 27, we're still going to be able to meet our reserves in the general fund. And that's really important. I would say I'm grateful to be here and not in Mount Shasta, because I understand there's situations not as bright. And so if there's any high level questions about the revenues, I'd love to take any of those questions now before we kind of look at some of the departments.
And I just want to say Blake is also online.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to point out 4125, which is the third one down, TUT. You can see it runs out in March of next year. That's about halfway through after 3/4 of the way through the fiscal year, which is why there's only a portion of it in 25, 26, and then 0 the following year. That's just to show that we did go the worst case scenario of not having the sales tax be renewed.
And as you can see, also the transient occupancy tax right below that. So that does include last year, we did go and get that increased, went to the voters, they approved, and that is now at 12%. And so you see an uptick in that revenue as well. And that's a conservative number. We hope it's more.
I would just like to point out to anyone who's reading this, the far column to the left says prior year actual, and then original budget from that. That is not the past year. Ordinarily, you adopt a budget before the end of the budget you're in. So there's a gap. So we don't have the audited numbers. We have the numbers. They're just, it represents fiscal year 23, 24, not 24, 25. As you're looking at that. So
Yes.
there is a missing data point that staff has under advisement and we've looked at.
Yeah, so be aware the prior year actual are not the final audited numbers. So they may be subject to change.
No,
Or no,
That's,
they are, but
those
for
are
year
the
before.
audited numbers from 23, 24.
oh, not 24, 25.
It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
24, 25.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not
Correct.
current closing.
Yep.
previous year.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Blake, I have a question. Have you received any payouts from essentially Q2? I don't think we would have June at this point, but what does the trend look like for both TOT and sales tax?
Yeah, great question. TOT is definitely higher than projected. Sales tax, not quite as much.
Okay, so you know, generally speaking, are we talking about like a 3% over under for sales tax?
Gosh, good question. We are still receiving the last bit of 24, 25. So we
Yeah.
haven't even received our data for like, I think we're about to receive June's.
Okay,
Yeah.
but looking at April, May, and just like projecting that out and just copying May into June, you know, are we looking at like a 3% decrease? Because, you know, so the reason I'm asking the question is like a 3% increase or 3% decrease is really negligible, generally speaking, for inflation. Those are normal for Q2. Q2 tends to be the worst quarter of the year. But if it's like down 10%, like that's a little bit more worrisome than say like 3.
Yeah, I would say not negligible then. I mean, it
Okay.
is negligible.
Okay, it's negligible.
Oh,
Okay,
I
and
will-
then TOT, generally speaking, you said is significantly up, or any like number associated with that?
Yeah, if you're using your 10% number, I would say it's at least that or maybe above.
Okay, okay, thank you.
The longer trend with TOT is down the last 2 years though, from a high of 23, 24.
Yeah.
So the number that isn't here, the 23, 24, 25 year is less than the prior year actual of
389.
389.
Yeah, I think we're right at the
Hence the
340
budgeting of
number.
340 and 348.
One thing I want to point out about that number as well is one of the main reasons it dropped is not necessarily because of a lack of people coming in to visit in hotels. It was that with a lot of these couple projects we had between Caltrans, the rail yard, there was a period of time in the off season on that prior year where
They were-
all hotel rooms were pretty much filled with contractors working on these projects. So, and that's the reason we saw that one year have a abnormally high amount, and then return back to closer to what the past trend was. So it's not like we're seeing an overall decrease in visitors. We're just not, we just don't have the extra visitors added on by those contractors doing special projects.
Okay, any other questions on the revenue side?
Looks like we're getting a good amount of building permits coming in.
Yes, actually, like where is that one at?
4210.
I guess just for.
Yeah,
like-
that's
yeah, just-
not even close to what I mean, we'll probably be pushing, we were over 30,000 last year, so, and we're already have really good numbers this year.
So one of the things to just note for everybody, again, even though it's in a revenue line, when it comes to city fees, it's a cost zero. So you cannot make money off of fees.
More, I was referring to the fact that there's building going on.
Yes.
Not the fact that we're making more money off of it,
Yes.
but that there's more economic activity going
Well,
on.
Correct.
Yeah, but I think
I know.
I think it's
Yeah,
an, yeah.
You're right. No, and that's a great point to bring up. I was more just highlighting. the overall trend.
Yes, yeah,
Not necessarily-
building being up is great, but that means we have a higher expenditure in building and they have to match each other as closely as possible. I think it would be nice to know what the expenditures and revenue look like for the building department, if we are recouping fees correctly.
And that is on our list of tasks to handle here probably in the next 90
that-
days.
I don't think we've updated for inflation since 2006.
So it is according to ICC standards, so we use the ICC chart.
But I don't remember us adopting a fee schedule for building since 2006.
Finance committee was informed that staff internally has been doing this for about a year. We did never come back to us.
It was part of we reviewed it and it
Okay.
was part of what was adopted previously. It just never happened. And I don't know why that didn't happen, but Leo and his crew have caught that and now accommodated.
Okay, we may want to make sure that those have been adopted properly.
I will definitely have them reviewed.
Thank you.
But overall, we do have an increase in the number of building permits that are active than we've seen in a long time.
It's not to pop your balloon. I guess the good part of it is the more building activity means that there's going to be a newly assessed property value and therefore a higher property tax revenue.
Yes.
That's where you see revenue generation in that. So, sorry. Yes,
What you just said is
I know. I did. The other comments were kind of popping.
Okay, city council. So the only major change there is associated with the special election, which we will be dealing with here right after the budget item. That estimate is 38,000. And that's the high end. So if somebody else has something else on the ballot, then that would be reduced. As you can see, the budget year following is 5,000. That's our typical spend based on how it's allocated out and the number of items that are on a ballot. And so that's really the only change to that one. So any questions on city council?
Nope.
Okay, city manager, this is the section where HR consultant falls under. And that portion is in there. As we're wrapping up a couple things that carried over from last year. That it's a little bit higher and then it drops. And I would not expect it, barring any other issues, I would expect that we would not even meet that budget, but that is there. Other than that, just most of it's stable with some inflationary raises. You'll notice kind of across the board, group insurance and liability insurance, all of those are up. And that impacts every single department, which we have an allocation for how that formula works. City clerk, treasurer. And so city clerk and treasurer, that item is generally the same, slight inflationary raises. If there's any questions, just please stop me. As there's quite a few pages, I want to just keep moving. City attorney. So city attorney, as you know, we've done, we have a new city attorney now. Thank you, David, for being here and supporting us as staff. And then also I moved in this budget, the previous budget, we did not have the code enforcement attorney on board either. And so I felt it was important to have more clarity around that and how that expenditure was displayed to the public. And so I moved them all into one department. And you can see we categorized them, attorney, code enforcement, non-recoverable, and then attorney, code enforcement, which that's considered the recoverable component. So 50,000, that is what we use towards abatement related activities. And so once we get to the point where those, it's an abatement related activity, then that stuff is attributed back to the property or the individual that is out of compliance. And then the city attorney's contract is in there now. And so that has shown an uptick. There are a couple line items from last year that are not in there. They dropped off for some reason, but last year's budget was approximately 40,000. And so we've seen an increase in that area.
And I do want to point out in that increase from 40 to the 155 is a good chunk of that was actually moved over from
Law enforcement.
So basically everything under non-recoverable and code enforcement. So that 60,000 was budgeted previously
In law enforcement.
but it was under law enforcement. It's
Yep.
been since been moved over here. So it was 40,000 here plus another probably 40 in law enforcement last year.
Yeah, it was something like that. I don't know if it's in here. I have to look. But yeah, it was right around that range but we didn't separate it out between recoverable, non-recoverable. And we had a couple of bigger projects where the recoverable component, one of those where we did assess a property in late June for 41,000. And so that component was over budget, but those were brought to the council and discussed. Planning. So city planning, we also have changed over our city planner, and I've also changed how we budget that. And so what I realized is that a component of that did not pop back in here, but there was a contract for approximately 25-ish thousand. And we didn't isolate what's cost recoverable versus non-recoverable. So when an individual comes to the city and they do an action like lot subdivision or something like that, or combining a lot, those expenses are 100% on that individual, but we still have to account for them. So we do get revenue that offsets those. And so that's where the cost recovery component comes in. The rest of it is associated with everything that we do with code changes, zoning updates, and all of those kind of things. And so, yes, we see an uptick in that expense as well. Finance. So finance, the one thing we got going on there that has caused an increase in cost. And so we were notified about 2 years ago, I believe it was, that our finance software was coming to an end of support. It's currently in on-premise supported software on a server. Both the server need to be replaced and the software, they're no longer going to support it at the end of 2026. And so there's a project in here for us to replace that. And so as soon as the budget's done, Blake will be diligently working with Tyler Technologies to update to the new software. And a portion of that capital outlay is that implementation process. And so that's why there's an uptick in the software charges and an uptick in the capital outlay. And I think we did, last time we did that was 2015 or 2016. So it's been about a decade. Building inspection services. So about 9 months ago, we hired a new building official, and they've been actively working and bringing in more revenue than we have in a while. And so we have an uptick in that. Previously, I noticed it fell off. Previously, our budget was approximately 45,000 in that department. And so now we've seen about an $80,000 increase in activity. Law enforcement. And so law enforcement, this from the salary standpoint, that includes our code enforcement. Then contract services is the sheriff's department. And then we also have nuisance abatement and animal control. And so those items also fall into that department. And so there's a kind of an inflationary increase in that department. Fire department, no major increases in fire, just standard inflation related stuff. I don't remember any big capital spends or anything like that. As you note, the biggest uptick you'll see is line item 7160 workers comp. So workman comp insurance, the most expensive workers comp you can ever pay is for volunteer firefighters. And the second most expensive is regular firefighters. And the third is the police. And so typically, when you have a volunteer fire department, you have really, really high workers comp. And so this number is associated directly to the number of people that we have that volunteer and their time to fight fires for us. And so that's the largest increase in that department. Fire tax assessment, that just kind of goes along with the taxes. That's a set rate and it just comes in. So there's no real major changes there. All right, streets and roads. So streets and roads, as you'll see, this is when we get into the public works staffing, where we went from 9 authorized to 7 authorized in this budget, just due to some overhiring and shifting around. And so you'll see a downtick in salaries, and you'll see that in streets and roads and facilities, and then also in all of the utilities related ones. And so here we actually see a downtick in what that expense looks like. And that also covers at the very bottom there, HBP preliminary engineering. That was the highway bridge program. And so that's the Butterfly Bridge project that I spoke about. So that's just the engineering component. Those will come back to the council with an adjustment, but we are grant funded for that. So there's some money to offset it. Facilities, kind of the same thing as streets and roads. It actually had a downtick. Public works shop, so line item 8250.01. In budget year number 2, that number, my recommendation is now shifted to match that of the finance committee. This is the expense side. So the expense side stays the same. So that's the line item where it offsets that $1,050,000 that we saw in the revenues at the beginning. And so other than that, everything else is just slight increases for inflation related activities. So in this budget, we focused on trying to bring more clarity to some aspects of what we do. One of those areas was parks and trails. and it wasn't until we lined everything out that we realized how many we actually take care of. And so we kind of we've taken on more of a maintenance role associated with park and recreation. So this could readjust as that arrangement with park and recreation adjusts. But preliminarily, this is kind of an estimate because we don't have any good data yet because we haven't always taken on the ballpark and that type of stuff. And so you can kind of see there's some, about $8,500 associated with the ballpark and then botanical gardens is separate from that. But we felt it was important to be able to show the public, hey, look, we're spending money on the parks, but it wasn't really clear in where it was in our budget before. And so now we kind of separated out its own department to, kind of highlight that. And then we also did the same for the library because we felt it was important. We know the library is important. Tim Holt was kind enough to come forward to the finance committee on numerous occasions. And so as you can see there, a commitment to Friends of the Library grant is associated with year one. And because of our financial instability for year two related to the TUT, we chose not to put anything in that year in the budget, and but year two can always be adjusted. So any comments on those? Okay, get down to the last two in the general fund. Community promotions, or community projects and improvement funding. And so we've kind of moved that around a little bit. I know previously I had come forward to the council earlier this year about downtown facade improvement grants, and due to budget and some hesitancy on my part on like, I wish I wouldn't have brought that forward, but I know it's really important. And so I chose to delay it. And because our deficit was looking pretty substantial, because we originally had projected 100,000 and 150,000, or 50,000 and 100,000. I shifted it 1 year to 26, 27, and then the following year. But so still holding to that commitment, but just delaying the implementation of that. And so you also waterfall grants, you'll see a decrease in waterfall grants, and then kind of a decrease in downtown Wi-Fi.
Do you just want to point out on the waterfall grants?
Sure.
One thing that ties into the prior year actual and budgeted amounts changing so much. Two is also that library is, the library has been moved to a different part of the budget, and they used to be part of that program. So that is also part of that decrease as well.
Yes, and then downtown Wi-Fi, we did a little more scrubbing on those numbers and isolated some of those expenses back into the utilities where they belonged, just associated with all of our sewer lift stations, the wastewater plant, and all of the other Wi-Fi drawing activities that are required within the utilities to make them operate and function better. And then economic development, so that was previously, so that's SEDC, that's our MOU with them. That was previously budgeted, where was that?
6,000.
Yeah, it was previously 6,000, but it was not located here. It was located was that in city manager or? Yeah, it was just a random professional contracts. But I felt it was more important to highlight, that we are focusing on economic development activities, and kind of everything associated with that is grouped right here. So it's more clear for the community. And as you can see, the following year, there's a bit of a reduction in waterfall grants, but there's, kind of just some carryover from previously adopted programs, but not implemented. Any questions?
I'll just note on the 54,000 was passed by council. Finance committee didn't really consider changing it. Obviously, with the deficits, that could be looked at. But since it was actually passed by resolution to be that amount, we kept that in there.
And then resilience coordinator. So this is Stephen's position and the grant associated with him. All of that stuff is pretty much set and outlined by the grant. Okay, enterprise funds. And so in this budget, we have the Talon Dally Fund is the very first one. It's we've gotten a bit of a refresh by default because of the construction associated with the bridge. So there's lots of new stuff that went in down there, and I know we're still working with the state to make sure it's correct. And I know that the Talon Dally group has also met with the state and to try and get everything back to the way it was. But essentially, this is what it costs for us to work to maintain and keep the improvements associated with the park going. The maintenance fund that's interest only. And so there's a fund at Community Foundation. We receive the interest to maintain the park. And so this money is kind of funds itself. Okay. All right, on to the rest of the enterprise fund. So sewer department is the first of our major enterprises. The sewer department is due 218 process. We're at the end of our 5-year cycle. So our sewer charges are, as you can see, the following 2 years in a row, they're capped at $1,260,000 based on what has been adopted previously. There's also a $5 million sewer collection system. That's the project that's currently going on here that is now moved to the downtown area. So that's just our estimate on what we'll spend out of that project through completion. That's all grant funded. So it's just something we have to account for on the revenue side because that's the money we get from the state. And then we'll see an expenditure line item on the next page for it. As you can see, there's also kind of a downtick in salary related expenses, but there's an uptick in insurance and liability and property insurance. And so, those are things that we can't really do much about. Also work comp is up. And so it's just kind of the nature of the game. All that stuff gets expensive, and when the fund gets hit hard, then we get hit hard. And we're being a part of SCORE, then we're like, I don't know how many communities it is, 13 or whatever of us there are that fully pay in. We're a bunch of small communities. So when somebody gets hard, then it kind of impacts all of us to ensure just to keep our funds solvent. But we see discounts and benefits associated with that being self-insured. So you can see, so one of the conversations that I had or at the beginning of this was associated with management and admin charges. And so this is where that starts coming into play. And so the way that's allocated back out is based on percentage of revenues that each department takes in. That is not the general fund. And so the sewer department has the largest share of that. They have 36%. And so you can see of the 255,000 proposed allocation, the largest portion of that falls to the sewer. And then let's see. Those are the major things in the upper portion. As when you get down to the bottom, so there's a. Sure, go ahead.
Another important thing for anyone looking that I just kind of want to point out here, when we're looking at these numbers, it's something that is not good, but does make it better, is 7860 depreciation / amortization. So what that is it's the depreciation on all of our buildings, vehicles, and all that kind of stuff associated with this fund. So that $300,000 item is not, a good way to look at it is that's not money that we're spending. It's money that we should be saving, putting away to save to replace all of those assets and items. And that's just the way that fund accounting works. And that's the way that our, the auditor makes us put it, and the way the government makes us do it. So when you're looking at that $300,000 charge, that's not actually money going out the door until we need to replace it. So right now, you know, that depreciation and amortization, when you're looking at how much negative the fund actually is, goes a long way towards not having the cash amount in the fund decrease as much. However, the problem is that also means that we are not saving anything to replace these, anything in the future. So I just wanted to point that out because it is, when you're looking at these numbers of, you know, $300,000 expenditures, it is important to just note what that actually is and how it actually fits into the fund. And you will also see that in all of the enterprise funds as well.
So the next two areas, Department 201 wastewater treatment plant, and then Department 202 lift station and collection system. So Dennis and I worked really diligently to try and do a better job of helping people understand where our money's being spent within the sewer department. Everything up above is kind of just a general expenditure, but these specifically, because we're dealing with a lot of issues related to the treatment plant itself. And then we wanted to sub out kind of this sewer system separately, you know, so that's all the collection. That's the stuff that comes to your house, to the lift station before it ever gets to the treatment plant. And so we line item these out. They were previously incorporated up above, which they don't show now, but these numbers are higher than what they were. The biggest of those numbers is the chlorinator contact maintenance chamber. At the beginning of the last 2-year budget cycle, that number was 60,000, and we were maintaining underneath that budget. Last year, we were struggling to maintain 110,000, and that's just to remain in compliance with the state and ensure our water is treated properly before it enters the river. And so the inflation within that sector, that's where all of our chemicals and supplies go, is substantial. And so when you see this deficit, and when we go to the 218 process, we'll outline these sections specifically because we felt it was very important, because that's where that stuff that's out of our control. We're not spending, I mean, I have a $30,000 line item in here for equipment replacement. I have one item that I have to buy in the lab. It's $13,000. One pump cost me $6,000. And so it takes about, you know, it doesn't take much to get to $30,000 in just standard replacements. And because we've had such long deferred maintenance and haven't had a new sewer project, some of the stuff that we planned to replace 2 or 3 years ago and haven't gotten done because it's part of a planned sewer improvement project, sewer plant improvement project, is now starting to hit us because we haven't been able to replace it because we're expecting this big grant. And so we're being forced to replace it. So when you look at the bottom line, it shows we're at a negative 337,000. If you take the depreciation of 300,000 out, essentially, basically we're losing about 37,000 a year. Last year we basically broke even, and that was only because staff retired when they did. If that staff would have carried on 2 or 3 months more, we would have actually been in the negative last year too. And so our operational expenses that we can't control, especially like utilities, I don't even know where that line item is, but I know that one's outrageously crazy. Yeah, it's up 15,000. And then, you know, 80,000 the following year. When they increased the rates in January, it kind of devastated all of the departments associated with on the utility side. Any questions on sewer? All right. Solid waste. So there's not any significant changes in solid waste. There's, you know, the wages are kind of held steady. I think there's, you know, some inflationary cost in there. It's a little bit higher than what last year was, but you know, our tipping fees, we're expecting tipping fees to go up. Our contract rate is in there, and so, you know, there's some expenditures in there, you know, and also the revenue went up because we did 218. So then that kicked back the admin charges a little bit differently too, in that calculation. And so we're still at a deficit. This is multiple years running now. This account I have the most, this fund I have the most concern with, on the operational reserve side. And, you know, I know we went through a long 218 process last year, and then legislation kind of threw that out the door at the last minute. So Blake and I, this is one of the first ones we're going to tackle right after the budget's approved, to bring forward because we have most of the data. But you know, looking at trying to catch back up and get back to meeting our $180,000 reserve requirement is important. So any questions on that? Okay. All right, water department. So the water department, we have about $1 million in reserves. We plan on doing a spend down a couple of years in a row with some capital improvements related projects. You know, some operational, but mostly capital improvements related. You know, we also same impacts, insurance and stuff like that. You can kind of see in our revenues section, there's spring maintenance project, UV project, and those things are kind of floating because we don't know exactly when they're going to start or when they're going to finish. So we budgeted in 2 years, but we also offset it by expenses. So there's like a negligible impact, but our 218 runs out this year also. So we're kind of at a revenue standstill unless we use more water. Or people use more water, I guess I should say, the customers. So the capital spends are the 8,000 numbers. And so you'll see like equipment replacement. We have some equipment we need to replace, water main projects. So we kind of been budgeting that every year. Last year, we asked the council to do that project in the park. We asked for 137,000. We came in at like 109 or 110, something like that. So we were able to come in under budget. And then well infrastructure. So a part of one of the flags that the state has on us for compliance is that we don't have a secondary water source. As soon as the county approves our property purchase, we will have access to a well that we hope to bring into compliance with municipal water standards. And then from there, we'll work to have a planned project, hopefully through a grant process that'll get us to be able to get that water from the airport area down to Dunsmuir as our secondary water source. And so this is just kind of the first phase and what that improvements. That's the really high end. We're hoping we don't have to go that high. We're going to do a pump down test as soon as we get access to the property, and then we'll know where we stand. But that was kind of a high end budget number. And then the others are projects. Any questions on that one? Okay. All right, airport. So airport is kind of it's always a back and forth on, are we getting enough revenue? We never get enough revenue. I wish I could. Keep throwing out crazy ideas on how we can improve our access, but I think if we're able to get water up there at the airport, then that'll give access to more improvements around the airport and associated. So the two major changes in this budget are we did add in depreciation, which is something we have not ever done before, and then additionally, the North End Taxiway apron. So that project, we originally had that estimated at $1 million. The bid came in at like 619,000. And then with the construction administrator, et cetera, it's going to be about an $800,000 project. And I think our expense out of that's about $5,000. And so really there'd be about a $13,000 deficit. But I fully expect that to be offset because we still have an aircraft up there from from the Forest Service. They've been there since mid-June, I think. So we're running on about 50 days now at $200 a day minimum. And so, I mean, that's a really, that'll offset our revenue up on the top. As you can see, we only budgeted 25,000. That's typically what we get for our hangars. But on years where there's heavy fire activity, then we do get increased revenue with a Forest Service contract. And actually that contract's currently in review. I have it with David right now.
And there was more than one plane up there earlier, correct?
Right.
And
So
that's-
there's the way the contract currently works is that it's because we're actually out of contract. It kind of fell through on the federal side with all the changes that went on. And so we're just now just got the first iteration of that back the other day. But the way it currently works is that we get for the first two aircraft, it's $200 a day. For three or more aircraft, it's $300 a day. And so I'm gonna see typically we enter into a 5-year agreement. So that's what this commitment's gonna be with them. And so we're just kind of starting the negotiation process on what that looks like, but I hope to get that one signed, and that'll add, when they do use it, then we want to, they're good for the money. So it always helps us out. And that's pretty much what helps us balance our budget and gets our projects completed. And then you can see in the second year, we do have a north end taxiway apron. And so actually it's under the same line item, but there's $185,000. Sometimes that stuff carries over through project closeout, depending on when we get it finished. And but we also are planning, because they're proposing another 95.5 match for this federal side, and then we get 4.5% from the state. And so we do have more allocations allowed at the airport. And this is like outside of 100%, this is like the cheapest we can ever get money to improve the airport. And so the south end of the taxiway also needs improvement. And we hope we can get that accomplished in there with a minimal cost of maybe a couple $1,000s out of our pocket for, a couple $100,000 in work.
Any chance of getting a grant to cover fuel?
Eventually, but okay. So then the next few funds are associated with, well, the next one is local transportation. That's Fund 50. This is where we pay stage out of, so you can see a transit assistance number in there. That number keeps creeping up. It is now 49,000. So I have a pretty big concern about that, as our number that we receive has not really upticked much. We are budgeting 72,000, but the 2 years ago actual was 74. So our number has gone down, but the expenses associated with transit, I don't know that the benefit we gain with the current structure of the transit system actually accounts for a $49,000 spend. And then also road and sidewalk repair down at the bottom, we do have $40,000 attributed there. We're looking to do, and that number, and in funds 58 and 59, the next two also, you'll see an uptick in those type of expenditures. We're looking to try and do some crack sealing, and then also a chip seal project up to like $100,000, and should help us repair a bunch of roads and get them in shape for more longer term, sustainment, I guess. And so we do have money in these accounts, in these funds. They're all hovering around 60 to 70,000 in money that's sitting in each of these accounts. So that's kind of just a spend down of the money that's already there, plus our normal operational money. Because we don't spend in funds 58 and 59, we don't spend all the money that we receive every year. We only spend a portion of it. And then snow removal, nothing major there, just pretty much standard equipment replacement type stuff and supplies and materials, holding a fairly steady budget. CDBG, this one's fairly stable. number. We do have downtown revitalization there. So that's just in the event that we don't have that fully paid out from that grant that we are with Cosmont. That's just a final grant closeout type action. So, but money in, money out, that's a balanced account. And downtown sewer assessment, and so, or South Dunsmuir sewer assessment. So this fund is coming to an end pretty soon. So this is a 20-year sewer assessment. I think we're on year 18 or 19. So I think by the end of this budget, I think this one will go away. We're really close. I'd have to check on that, but that's why you see the numbers starting to decrease in the amount of payments we have to make. So. And so there's the overall budget, and I'm open to any questions.
All right, any questions? I'm going to use this time before we go into public comment to invite our city treasurer and our citizen member of the finance committee up to say anything they'd like to say about the budget and the budgetary process. And this is not timed, so there is no 3-minute timer. This is not public comment. This is input from the other members of the finance committee.
Hi, council, staff, fellow committee members, citizens. I'm honored to be able to comment on the 2-year budget, even though it's kind of an uncertain economic time. And thanks, Dustin, for such a detailed explanation of everything. It doesn't really left much to be said. The budget is reflective of a challenging financial landscape with lots of unknowns, rising costs, declining revenues. And so we want to stay on top of this and make sure that trend doesn't continue. And working on the budget with the committee for the past several months, we have looked at budgets that had larger deficits and that looked much worse. And so we've worked diligently to review every line and to really look at essential needs and try to manage the resources responsibly. And I also want to note that it's council's, you have the ability to redefine and re-amend anything that's in here after its approval. And so with that being said, I think one of the things that will have to be addressed in the future is the funding for the public works building. You can expect that that will be an amendment that you will have to deal with. I appreciate the city staff for reorganizing the budget so it's more accurate and in the future more clear about what the money is being spent for and where. And I would also say that we value the input of residents and please share your priorities with the city, and that council, your leadership is key to shaping our path forward. Thank you for your time. Any questions for me?
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the best treasurer report I've heard in a while.
Citizen Clother.
So the reality is the budget's late because they've been training me for the last 4 months, and poor Dustin and these guys have had to answer too many questions. My role has been to be the citizen representative, and when I can't understand things that I can then explain to the public, these poor guys have to try to make it clear to me, and sometimes I'm a little hard-headed. But what we did do is we're seeing different patterns within the budget where we can better define how we make decisions. One of those is direct and indirect costs for enterprise funds, because that can be highly suspect in the greater city when we start asking for new sales taxes, increased utility rates. People are going to start asking where the money is going. And so we want to make sure that that's very clear how those costs go between general fund and enterprise funds. We'll also want to look at how we can regulate or make policy, how we fund things like the library or the pool or a number of other things that become arguable in the public. Tim, still there, has had to come hat in hand and beg for an amount rather than us pre-deciding this is the pattern we're going to follow and the kind of funding we can make available. So those are the kind of things that I'm hopeful that we can work on as a finance team and bring you some patterns that make sense to the general populace. Poor Blake and Dustin have walked me through the many lines of the budget. And it's a complicated thing. Giuliani, you work in it all the time in another city, so you get to double dip. And I appreciate your expertise on that. And Michael and Matthew, the attention you guys have paid and pay. And Hannah, poor Hannah and I, the newbies, trying to figure everything out. So we have done a lot of work back and forth. We've run Dustin through the ringer. One of the observations is the longer we wait to make the budget, the more accurate the forecast is. And so we watched him tighten. So I think in the past, you may have seen budgets that had a little extra fluff in them or sandbag a little bit maybe, because they don't know for sure. I think this budget's, would you say, pretty tight?
About as tight as it can get,
About as
yes.
tight to reality as can get. So the thing that we're going to want to be watching for, I think Dustin's done a great job of putting it in the commentary, and I asked for that specifically because our citizenry need to understand that it costs money to run the city. And for those who sit in their houses with social media and criticize everything that's going on, I had a discussion with somebody. Do you like having sewer? Do you like having water? Do you like having solid waste? Then we need to pay our bills. And so the encouragement I have for you guys is that in coming months, we need to have increased transparency for what the value of the city is. One of the jokes at the finance team was, well, we could unincorporate. And Michael's like, that's not going to happen. We would lose too much.
It's too expensive.
But do our citizens realize the advantage that they have in having the city and having you guys as our city council people? Do they realize the measures the city goes to keep things running? The trees that were cut with our guys and set up an outside service, the trucks get repaired, work that Dennis does to keep things running. So given that we're going to be looking at a new TUT and increased rates, I come to the microphone again saying we really have to push into our PR and how that happens, how we get the word out. I saw somebody comment today that they were surprised that the budget was on the schedule tonight for the meeting. And I'm like, no, if you're actually paying attention, you would know that. So we've got people out there firing over the bow just because they're not paying attention. But whose fault is that? A little bit theirs, but even more so ours. How can we get the good news out there? And so how can we, when we present our budget, and we've talked a little bit to the Sun Finance team, talk about we're in a deficit budget. Can we talk about what people are going to get, but what they're not going to get this year? You know what I mean? I mean, we've tightened it up, so that means some things aren't happening. Or we're being clear with our public about what's not going to happen, but what is going to happen. And so that's that PR piece. That's what I want to be able to talk about on the streets. We have protection, we have police, we have fire. We want those things. They cost money, sorry, but they do. So what can we do to just really inform the public what they get for their money, I guess, as we move into this season of needing more money to keep running. So that's what I learned. So questions for me. That's a lot of rambling, but hopefully there was some coherency in there somewhere.
Well, I'd like to especially, right here, Dustin.
Oh, there you are.
I'd like to especially thank both you and Hannah. It's being your first year and we dove into that 2-year budget. You guys definitely did your part and I want to commend the both of you for taking that on.
You are welcome. It's been a pleasure. So hopefully this gives you enough to work with, you guys, and thank you for your patience in our protracted budgeting process.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, guys.
Just FYI throughout discussion and all that kind of stuff, if, as finance committee members, if you have important points, you can't be recognized through the chair for the two of you. Since there's things that you may know that affect the discussion based on what we've talked about immensely in finance committee. So once we get into that stretch, I'll probably see if you have anything to add again at that point. With that, unless anyone has anything else, I was going to open this up to public comment. All right, we'll move into public comment. 3 minutes, 30 seconds. I normally give as this is the budget, it pretty much means that you can address almost anything that has to do with city business because this is the business of the city. So with that, I'll open this up to public comment. We'll do individuals in the room first, followed by individuals on Zoom. I do already see that we have someone with their hand up on Zoom. But with that, I will open this up to public comment and please limit your comments to anything that has to do with city business or stuff that the city can do.
Roy Bailey. I was sure glad that it was on all the budget you had, you looked at in paper was online. It was very nice that I was able to get on an iPad and follow along section by section. That is something, because the budget only came out 3 days ago or 4 days ago, or there wasn't time to read it, but at least there was some back and forth where I was able to follow it in this room. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. Any other public comment from anyone in the room?
Hi, I have one. I don't live in Dunsmuir, but I do obviously work in Dunsmuir. I just want to say that I do appreciate all the work that Hannah Smith has put into this. Thank you so much. I've noticed a big difference in what the treasurer has been doing in Dunsmuir since Hannah came on. You've been very involved in the whole process, and I think that's made a real difference in the town. And I think it's made a real difference in this budget. So thank you so much, Hannah.
Any additional public comment from anyone in the room? Seeing none, I'll move on to Zoom. If you'd like to unmute Allison. All right, Allison, you are unmuted. So whenever you get going, I will start your 3 minutes.
Okay, Allison, River Avenue. Thank you so much, Hannah, and council. I think the budget looks great. I reviewed it and I appreciate and understand that it's difficult, given the resources that we have. I think the tax increase is great. In fact, I think we should increase it more. Maybe 1.25% would be great. I agree with a PR type of campaign. Social media can cause a lot of problems in our small town. People often bring problems and not solutions. Misinformation can be spread, resentment can be expressed. I've always been one to bring solutions to town problems. I do think we need some talking points so that we can get this tax passed. Also, you've heard me comment before. I always believe that money solves most problems, but not all problems. And I'm specifically referencing the pool, in particular this season, a very short season that we had. I gave the pool $25,000 in a grant, and I don't really see the fruits of that labor. I think that throwing money at a problem typically works, but there are some systemic issues with some things that I think also need to be addressed. And I just want to once again thank folks. I think the budget looks great. I know how much hard work gets put into something like that. So thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Dustin, and thank you, Council, for your hard work.
Thank you very much. Is there any other further public comment this evening? All right, seeing none, I will close public comment. And first off, I'd like to just go over to Blake, if we could, and see if he has anything that he would like to add as we're going into discussion as the finance director.
No, nothing to add here.
Okay, thank you, Blake. All right, any discussion?
I have some, yes. Anyone else want to go first? Because I'm going to be a bit. Okay. Hello. Thank you everyone for the budget that you put forward. This is a lot of work, especially coming from where Councilmember Brian and I were in 2018. This is a huge leap from what we've dealt with. I mean, we didn't even really have a budget breakdown back then. To put in perspective for people, we didn't have a reserve policy. We didn't have really cash, to be honest. At that time, if you'll remember, we had the Delta fire in 2018, which shut down a lot of the city. We had no visitors. We had really no sales happening. And so that's where we were in 2018. So as dire as this seems, we're actually not doing that bad in perspective. But that being said, you know, I am personally disappointed in myself as a council member for us getting to this point of having multiple years of negative operating budgets. It's not ideal. It's not something that I think I personally set out to achieve in this position, and I'm really sorry for that. Financial resilience was something that, you know, I wanted to focus on for this organization, and I feel like we're backtracking on that a little bit. And so I have a number of things that I'd like to see happen in this fiscal year, and it's a big ask, and it's something that I think I would like to see a future agenda item on the priorities of the city, because I would like to put financial stability back to the top of that. And I understand, you know, I understand being involved in downtown enhancement. I understand being involved in a lot of these different priorities in the planning community development round, but when in my personal opinion, I'm happy that we still have the reserves and we're meeting that policy, but I don't believe it's good fiscal responsibility to have multiple negative operating budgets, not multiple years of negative operating budgets, especially when we know we haven't had a sheriff's contract increase. You know, it's been nominal, but we know that that's going to be increasing significantly here at any point. You know, the sales tax is very scary. We're going to talk about that later, so I'm not talking about that now. I would really like to see the Prop 218 for solid waste come back, at least within the next 2 months. I mean, it's not good to hemorrhage that amount of money. Same for the sewer water Prop 218. I understand that utility rates are already high for a lot of people, but unfortunately those costs, we just have to break zero at some point with all of those funds happening. I do really support seeing the airport rentals go up. It doesn't impact regular residents in the city of Dunsmuir, and you know, we've talked about it. I will channel Peter Arth for 2 minutes and just say, you know, we really do want the airport to at least break even and eventually be a revenue source for the city. So I really would like to see the airport rentals increased this year and continue to follow that schedule as much as we can. For those who don't know, there are statutory limits to how much we can raise the rent every so often. So we're kind of locked in, but that doesn't mean we can't just continue to lock into that highest amount of rate on those rentals as we keep going forward. Again, pretty much doesn't affect a regular resident in the city of Dunsmuir. Super controversial statement I'm about to make, but we have a code enforcement officer who also does animal control, and we do animal licensing through the city because we are statutorily required to report dogs with rabies our current dog fees are like $10 and $15. We need to raise the animal licensing fee.
It's on my list.
So
So-
it's, you know, Wairika went through this process a number of years ago and tiered it and essentially said like, look, like if you have you have a unaltered dog, it's a little bit less, or an unaltered dog is more than an altered dog, which we have now in ordinance. But I mean, it doesn't recoup the amount of money it takes to administer that program through our financial accountants and our front office workers. It doesn't recoup the amount of time that it takes Mark to go around and do enforcement letters. I'm pretty sure we probably spend more money on mailers to remind people to register their dogs than we actually collect for the dog registration. And I'm going to be honest, like people should pay more. I have a dog, so please make me pay more for the service that I get. So going back down to it, Prop 218 for sewer needs to happen. Again, our enterprise accounts can't keep hemorrhaging. I think there's a number of other really creative revenue generators that don't impact the regular resident, that impact people who are utilizing city services significantly. For example, because we have to have technology like Zoom and our financial software and our payment softwares, City of Reading has a technology surcharge that helps recoup the cost of those services. So essentially you take the total amount of those technology software purchases and just equate them out over everybody who utilizes that specific service. Same thing too, there are building permit surcharges, you know, that you can do. Again, if you're building in Dunsmuir, it is incredibly inexpensive. I understand that someone may not agree with me on that statement, but as someone who does this as a job, our building fees need to get addressed because we're going to be hemorrhaging in that area next. And again, people who want to build something, like I said, we don't make money off of that. But right now, if they're not paying for that service, if they're only paying a portion of that service, we are subsidizing those private individuals with general fund dollars. So I think people need to understand that is when we don't make people pay for the amount of time it takes to process something that we are required to do, we are essentially using tax dollars that could go to the library. We are using tax dollars that could go to other community programs. And so it's really important that those fees stay up to date with what the costs are associated with them. And yes, there is a very small nexus of increasing the cost of building will decrease the amount of building you're doing. But to be honest, there are insurance requirements. There are things that, you know, we can go in a case by case basis. If someone's low income and needs assistance, we have that ability to do as a council in our schedule. But I don't want to be subsidizing someone who's building a huge single family home. I'm not. Like, you have the money to do that. But anyway, that's my rant for the day. I'd really like to see a reprioritization of what we have going on to really focus on some of these revenue generators that don't rely on a sales tax. I know we're going to talk about the sales tax in the next item, so I'll save that. But I think this needs to be a holistic conversation over revenue generation and who are we subsidizing and who do we want to subsidize with the monies that we are gifted from the general populace.
So I appreciate you bringing that up because it's one of the things that I did mention in the city manager's letter was the fees component, right? And so I already have actually all of the fees. What I want to do and bring it forward to the council, and then in the future, we would bring it forward on an annual basis for updates. So we don't have to do this. Like I want to work through developing a process that, hey, we look at our fees and we update them annually so we don't get so far behind, because you're right, $5 for a dog doesn't cover a portion of what we pay to handle just animal enforcement. You know, I mean, because half the time just a couple weeks ago, the sheriff was called and they were down there, it was a dog bite, and it's like, that adds a whole different level of issues. And so I appreciate you bringing that up and supporting that effort, because it is exactly the direction where we're going from the finance side here, starting after the budget's approved.
And I would like to make just the last two things, because I forgot about them. I would like to see the budget amended tonight, if someone's okay with it. I get it if this is not gonna be popular, but I would like to see some money put back into the downtown facade program for this fiscal year. The reason why I would advocate for that is, again, going back to the building fees comment I made earlier. When we have people investing in their facades, so if we could bring the program back and do a bigger, match and not cover the full cost of, say, a permit application, but do a 50-50, something there. When we have people doing improvements to their building, it increases the assessed value of that building, which increases the property tax revenue that we receive from that. Now, I understand we're not a property tax state, so it's nominal, but I think those strategic investments in ourselves are really valuable. And I think having some money into that program, even if it's not the full scope that we really originally thought, I think, again, we have to, I understand the stability and getting to zero and not having a negative operational budget, but we do need to still continue forward with some investment in ourselves. And I think
Can I-
that program needs to be
Yeah,
supported.
may I address the program
Go for it.
briefly? So it was a two-part program. One was 100,000 towards planning and building
Mhm.
fee subsidization in the downtown, or subsidy. The 150,000 was actually a match grant. So this budget actually includes the incorporated 50,000 in subsidized building
Yeah,
permits.
I saw that
and
for the
planning
next,
fees.
I saw that applied in the next fiscal year, not this fiscal year.
That 50 is actually for the facade match grant only.
Okay,
So those would show up in revenue.
Right,
And I
because
believe-
the other
A
ones would
lack
just
of
be a
revenue.
reduction
And I
in
believe the other
expense.
reason we had it in that second year is it's a reimbursement. So
okay.
by the time that they got through the whole process, we were kind of thinking that it would be next fiscal year anyways,
Okay.
when we were dishing out the reimbursement.
So potentially there could be some expenses in this fiscal year if they were reimbursed in the first half
Well,
of next calendar year.
When Finance
Right.
Committee discussed it, they decided to prioritize subsidizing the planning and the permitting.
Mhm.
The actual cost would come later, and we thought would have less of an impact and
Okay.
cost more than that initial step. The barrier of planning essentially in the downtown is on us
Yeah.
until that fund runs out.
Okay,
And like I said, I think the main reason it went to the next year is it was structured as a reimbursement.
okay.
I'm in
So-
agreement, though, that we should not abandon that
Yes.
program.
Yeah.
I think it's, a meaningful step based upon the downtown revitalization plan. But I would challenge this council to cut that money from somewhere else
Mhm.
in this budget. Start thinking of it as, if we prioritize everything, nothing's quite the priority. We, particularly if, the immediate concerns are probably public works building, law enforcement contract as expenses, lack of a TUT, or the new passage of one, kind of the big challenges facing us in the immediate future. But longer term, we have to figure out which items we're going to prioritize, because we only have so many resources. I would encourage us to kind of deal with the elephant in the room and look at, we can raise fees. I think they should be accurate, whether it's enterprise funds or dog fees, they should represent the cost of what the service is. That's the fee structure. That's the contract we've signed up with, really, between the city and citizens. When it comes to, increasing Dunsmuir's ability to maintain and supply services, and I know our citizens want greater services, not less. The elephant in the room is, how do we grow our economy? We can raise the tax rate, but that's far less impactful than
Generating
new business. I would completely echo Councilwoman Lucchese's comments about our journey time-wise from 2018 till now. The big reason it's not as bad as it was back then, every one of our major income sources, but particularly TOT and sales tax and transaction use tax have grown by, I could look it up, but it beats the US economy's growth rate. It probably beats California's growth rate. We've done really well having more dollars circulating in Dunsmuir in the last 7 years. I think we need to be making decisions that goes in line with the comment of keeping some sort of facade program. With limited resources, we have to prioritize decisions that are going to increase the dollars circulating in Dunsmuir and kind of prioritize on financial growth in that regard. We have the infrastructure. We just need more dollars to circulate, and we need to incentivize that. I don't know how. I'm really grateful for some of the input of our finance committee members. We certainly discussed that as the big thing we need to tackle. But it's hard to cut things. It really is. So I'm all for amending that, Councilman Lucchese, but I'd propose
I
whatever we
think you guys
spend
have
on it.
explained it to me enough that I don't need to amend it.
Okay,
Yeah, you're good.
You know, though, you did bring up a good point that, since it is since it is reimbursements, there might be some expenditures in the second half of this fiscal year. So maybe what I wouldn't mind seeing is maybe just, once we get to the point where we're doing it, a reallocation of maybe instead of 50,
20,
0 and
30.
50, I was thinking, yeah, 20, 30 or 10 and 40, something like
Yeah.
that. So it's still the same amount, but that way, if we get to the point where someone's just on it and really wants to get going, we could potentially have that money available in the budget this year. But once again, that's just a little bit of a reallocation, not an overall increase. So that's maybe what I'd be in favor of doing, going forward right now. And then I just wanted to address this on the 218 process, because I know that's something that we have talked about significantly in finance committee as well, going through this budget, especially looking at solid waste and sewer. That was something that we had talked considerably about back since 218s are needed. The one thing we wanted, I think, at least I wanted to kind of get done first is that indirect cost allocation policy. So that way, whatever that policy is can be factored into the 218 process to make sure that we have the most accurate numbers. And I know just for me personally, I wanted to kind of see that happen pretty quickly, within the next month or so. So that way we can get working on some of these other more important parts. Because I know during the last, when we raised solid waste, apparently based off of some things that happened 15, 20 years ago, there's people who, oh, raising the rates is just a way to take money from the enterprise funds and move it into the general funds through that indirect cost allocation. Or if we have a policy that we can point to, that provides a lot of like, hey, here's the exact policy that we use. Here's the logic behind it. Here's why it's broken down this way. That we can show people to show that way there's thought behind it and there's reasoning behind it. It's not just money we're moving. And also, because right now it is quite the opposite. Just look at this budget and there's what, $500,000 or so that the general fund is subsidizing the enterprise funds right now over the next 2 years, roughly.
On a cash flow basis,
Cash flow basis.
as in bills are getting paid,
Yeah.
even though there's a negative account, it's being paid by general fund dollars.
Yeah. So if anything, right now it's quite the opposite. Is that the general fund is massively subsidizing
Other services.
the other services. Yeah, the enterprise funds. So. All right.
And to comment on that, I want to just emphasize to the council that both water and sewer, we serve people who are not actual citizens of the city. They live in the county. And so just remember that. And that's probably one of the PR points, like, sure. Those services don't just serve Dunsmuir residents. It serves people in South County. It serves people on the outskirts, on all sides of town. And so as that continues, we need to make sure, I have a discussion coming up with potentially more services outside of the community that, those operate independent of the general fund component. And so that's one thing we just have to make sure that, everybody understands. It's like, yeah, once you go past the cemetery, they're still getting water and sewer, but yes, we're not plowing their snow. We're not fixing their potholes.
Or more importantly, their property tax is not contributing to our
That
general
too.
fund. Their sales tax at Manfredi's, the TOT tax at Railroad Park. I mean, yes, and that Road Park's not a service connection, that they'd be interested in that, I have heard, but that revenue goes to the county, not us. So when we subsidize with the general fund, we are very much putting the burden on the citizens of Dunsmuir city limits, not our, fellow community members that are just outside.
We're relieving money from the
Utility rate.
Yeah.
At least the fund that is hemorrhaging the most is not really servicing individuals outside of town. So at least, I don't know if that's better or worse. I think it's better, but. All right, anything else?
I'll make a motion to adopt the 2025-2027 budget as presented via resolution 2025-16, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Dunsmuir adopting the 2025-2027 operating budget by title only.
You got to deal with the amendments.
With
That one amendment?
No.
No.
What about the amendment that I requested for the 1,000,005?
Oh, with the requested amendment of
50,000
1,000,000.
for a revenue line item.
No,
in
the way you
supplementary.
should handle this is,
It's presented in.
we should either vote on all of them or separate out which ones need to be voted on with, there's 4 recommendations from Finance Committee.
What the recommendations from Finance Committee.
But the ones the staff supports still aren't reflected in the budget, so we need to adopt those.
Okay,
Correct.
I will rescind my motion for the moment. I want this to be accurate. So where is the number?
Look at the supplementary.
Yep.
Packet.
And so there needs to be a number 5 on this list.
Mhm.
What was that? Say that again.
No, there's 4
What's the-
recommendations.
Yeah, but there was another one.
Oh,
We said it,
Councilman Lucchese said that she was satisfied with the
Okay.
facade improvement, correct?
It's fine.
So it's really just. what's
So
here.
it's the 4 items in the supplemental.
With,
And I think only 2 of them, well, yeah,
yeah, there's only one that has staff and Finance Committee disagreement. So
right.
obviously, recommendation 1 might need to be discussed independently by council. And it might do well to just vote on that first. But however you want to motion.
I rescinded my motion, so if you would like to make a new motion, you may.
Lost my sheet.
It's really just number 2. Number 1 is being dealt with,
No,
well, no, in
it's
the indirect costs
so
Item number 1 and item number 2.
or the staff recommendation.
Yeah, the other,
items 2 through 4,
well,
staff and Finance
Yes.
Committee agree on. So if you were to motion that,
Oh,
there's agreement
no,
there.
and we need to do 3 because it's incorrect. So
Yes.
the incorrect stuff needs to go.
the
to-
corrected sheet is this one with the unredacted.
Okay. And 4 is just putting. in
4 is
quarterly
more
budget.
staff direction, but you can
So-
formalize it.
Is it my understanding, if I were to make a motion with staff's recommendation for number 1, that Mayor Clarno and Councilmember Brian, you would not support that?
I want to look at that separately in. And then bring it back.
Okay. I'll make a motion to refer item 1 on the supplemental indirect cost allocations to the Finance Committee for further discussion.
Well, that, we need to adopt something in the budget
Yeah, so I think
for it for now.
the
Like
the 2
Finance
options
Committee's-
are
yeah.
to maintain what it was at 225,000
And have Finance Committee,
and have
Refer
Finance
back.
Committee review it,
I
or,
will rescind that, Stephen.
or
I
adopt,
promise I will be as straightforward for your minutes as possible.
how
or
about
adopt
this?
staff's recommendation of 255,000 and also refer it back to Finance Committee for further discussion and review.
Alright.
So I guess either one of them would go back to Finance Committee,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
if we
Alright.
get one
I'm fine
number,
with-
So I
I'm
will,
fine with 255 and moving it forward.
All right.
That would-
I will make a motion to support staff's recommendation of keeping the amount of $255,000 with a plan in the 218 process of the utilities to include the higher amount of 323,000 plus projected increases throughout the 218 cycle, and then refer the matter back to Finance Committee for further discussion and recommendation to council.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in, or
Request for
Well,
roll call.
roll call vote on. all this.
clarification, was the adoption of the budget and the other recommendations in that motion?
No.
I am
Each one
taking these one at a
individually and then-
Got
time.
it, got it, got it.
For,
Okay.
for the peace and sanity of the minute taker,
Thank
I will
you.
take these one at a time.
yeah, I
Cool.
think addressing these
Yeah.
first and then adopting the overall budget with the already
the
previous
amendments.
motions.
Yeah.
All right, well, I guess I will say for the, on the advice of our auditor, I'm really a fan of doing this exercise correctly, which is start with the justifications, end at a number. These numbers were derived in the context of looking at the budget. And while they may be perfectly accurate, I'd rather do it that way, and do it correctly. So I'm in favor of keeping the budget at 225,000 for each year until we have a recommendation from Finance Committee and council reviews the issue.
So it's been moved and seconded. So-
I know, I'm stating my
Unless you have
opposition.
another- Okay,
So I'll call the question.
so you want to lead the roll call?
I got it. Okay.
Would you like me to repeat? the
I'm,
motion?
no, I'm good. I'm just trying, I'm going to start with Councilmember Hubbard.
Aye.
Councilmember Brian,
Nay.
Councilmember Lucchese,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sebring,
Aye.
Mayor Clarino.
Just because Matthew and I control the agenda for Finance Committee and City Council, I'm going to say aye because we can make sure that we revisit that before the 218s happen. So, aye.
Okay.
Okay. Motion carried 3-2.
No, no,
Three.
4.
4-5.
4-1.
4-1.
4-1.
Sorry.
4-1. Oh, you said aye.
I said aye.
All right.
Because we're going to address
Okay.
it and then.
All right. I'm-
Sorry,
I move-
4-1.
I move council adopt Finance Committee recommendations 2, 3, and 4.
There a second?
Second.
Although, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Brian,
Aye.
Councilmember Lucchese,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sebring,
Aye.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Aye.
and Mayor Clarino.
Aye.
All
And
right,
I
passed
will
5-0.
move to adopt resolution 2025-16, adopting the budget with amendments as previously voted on.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call. On autopilot here.
It's okay.
All right, Mayor Clarino,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sebring,
Aye.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Aye.
Councilmember Brian,
Aye.
Councilmember Lucchese.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
budget adopted. All right, with that, I'm going to give us a 5-minute recess before we move on to the tax item. So we will be back here at 8:26.
Not bad, but